Right, I was here. Service.
Call to order the February 17, 2015 Mechanicsburg Borough Council meeting to order. We begin with the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
President Wickham.
Here.
Vice President Winchell.
Here.
Councilman McDermott.
Present.
Miller.
Here.
Kalman.
Here.
Stoner.
Here.
Weber.
Here.
Mayor Ritter. Solicitor Point. Here. Engineer Rogoski.
Here.
Chief Fox.
Here.
Chief Seekers.
Here.
Secretary Dennis.
Here. And we have a guest on the recycle rate reward presentation.
Mr. President, Council, Mayor, on behalf of the Borough, the Citizens Recycling Advisory Committee has been created and has been operating a recycling awareness campaign that began in April of 2014 in conjunction with Earth Day. And tonight, we're focused on presenting an award, our 10th award, to a Mechanicsburg citizen that recycles the right way. We, a small committee, goes out and surveys collection routes, and we look at recycling bins. We don't poke in them. We just take a look at it. And if we see anything in the bin that's not supposed to be there, then that resident is not qualified to be in the contest. If the bins are properly prepared, then that address is noted, and the address is put in with other good addresses and pick out a hat here at the Borough office for an award. And tonight, I have the pleasure and honor to present the 10th award to someone you know, Mr. Gerald Ford. Gerald is an award, and I'm able to present you with a gift certificate from Snuffler's Restaurant.
Okay.
Another donation. We've had donations for all this prizes that we've been giving out, and hasn't cost the borough a dime.
Congratulations, Jerry.
Thank you.
Picture of you, Jerry. Okay. Lambert?
Yes.
Okay, you're up next.
I don't want to take too much time. I want to make it fast.
How long do you want to talk?
Hello, everyone. My name is Hellenic Kouzina, and I own and operate Hellenic Kouzina. A couple of weeks ago, there was a mention made about making an ordinance to prohibit parking out front of the restaurant there. So I gathered some things together, and when we began the construction of the former bank building, we made every effort to make the most of what little space we had to work with, and especially with what little resources we had. With regards to parking, we added as much as we could along the back of the building where parking had already been established, and we were approved for 3 more on-site spaces along the front of the building. Soon after we opened, the issue about parking was briefly discussed with the police once they started fielding numerous phone calls from neighbors complaining about vehicles parking in front of their homes, driveways, and sidewalks, and supposedly some of them blocking their driveways and fire hydrants, etc. We never got around to finishing the parking out front because by spring of that year, 2012, the borough made notice that sidewalks, curbs, and ramps would be torn out, improved, built, or rebuilt. In our case, they were rebuilt because of the mouth of the driveway that the bank had. When I mentioned that we were approved for the 3 parking spaces out front, we were told that the state required this and that there was no looking back. So without any regard to money already spent, we yielded, and the borough's contractors came in, the appointed contractors, and they repaired this. They put sidewalks in, added curbs, and the additional improvements at our expense. When mention was made about doing something regarding the parking of the vehicles along Main Street, I asked that at some point we sit down together and discuss, any options or any ideas, trade ideas. And that was the last that I had heard about it until 2 weeks ago. So in almost the 3 years that we've been there, we've seen all sorts of activity from traffic on the corner we sit on, and I can honestly say there's more to it than parking along Main Street in front of the restaurant. I don't mean to second guess or insult anyone's intelligence, but I don't think that it's been looked at entirely objectively. We currently have the state required 35-foot setback. It's just faded and not posted. Something painted yellow is almost universal, and folks typically stay away from those areas when snow covered, signs are used during those months. But when yellow paint is faded, missing, and signs do not exist, as in our case, people are going to park almost anywhere, and we see that. I feel this is the only reason why we have a problem with cars parked there and why we lack a clear line of sight. When parked in front of the 35-foot setback, I can count up to 10 vehicles looking east during rush hour. I would say that's really good when considering that you look at Chestnut in Maine or High in Maine, one has to be well within the lane of travel in order to sight 10 vehicles heading west. At Philbrook in Maine, it is enough to encroach into the sidewalk versus going into the intersection. I met with the borough manager and police chief the day after the decision was made to draft the no parking ordinance, and we agreed that something needed to be done and that there's no question that a problem does exist there. The same problem exists one block west of Chestnut in Maine and a few more blocks over at High Street in Maine. The stat sheet from when we purchased the property from NAICIR Realty shows that a traffic study in 2010 counted an average of 13,386 vehicles at our intersection. Those same 13,386 vehicles go past Chestnut in Maine, and although some turn onto Walnut, almost as many thousands go past High in Maine on their way to Carlisle. My point is that traffic was here before Hellenic Kouzina. The only thing Hellenic Kouzina did to traffic is to slow it down and also give it a place for it to stop. Granted, many come from elsewhere for the purpose of dining with us, but that number pales in comparison to the 13,000 plus vehicles already coming through. Last year, an elderly couple crashed into our corner, and had it not been for the curbs and cheek walls that were installed in 2012, they would have ended up in our courtyard, possibly injuring guests who were dining outside. Coincidentally, when this crash occurred, there were no vehicles parked along Main Street that night, and the crash occurred as a result of someone's inattentiveness and impatience by pulling out in front of the elderly couple who was heading east, causing them to swerve out around and crash into our yard. Another crash we can account for was the summer of 2012 when a young woman was distracted by the pretty setting of our courtyard. She rear-ended a vehicle in front of her, and our staff that was outside that afternoon saw this and heard her expressing what distracted her. So does this mean we close and leave so we cause no more distractions here? In addition to the faded and not properly posted corners required by the state, which is typically seen in most urban settings, the problem here, I believe, is speed, inattentiveness, and motorists not being patient. I mentioned a few solutions to the manager and police chief, but we didn't really discuss it much. The only thing I feel will control our intersection effectively is a traffic light. And if cost and maintenance are a concern, the next best thing would be to turn the street into a one-way street heading south towards the light at Simpson Ferry. If it must remain a two-way street, maybe a right turn only, no left turn during certain times of the day, as can be found in many areas along Carlisle Pike. But none of this will help if motorists don't slow down a bit and be more attentive. Aside from all of the above ideas, the curb must be painted yellow and a no parking from here to corner sign needs to be installed. I would be more than happy to do this myself. Striping all 135 feet of it yellow would really be harmful to the restaurant, and I believe problems will still remain. Restrictions cause discouragement, and discouragement will keep some from coming. Those that will not be discouraged by the restrictions will park further into the neighborhoods, stressing neighbors even more. One neighbor has a sign that says, "Do not block sidewalk," which is placed along a side street, and the sidewalk doesn't even exist there. So I know she is feeling a certain kind of way already. We prepared a drawing that shows our intersection with the required setbacks and sight distances established by the state. With a 35-foot setback and the existing road speed limit of 35 miles per hour, the required 245 feet of line of sight is satisfied on the east side of Philbrook, Maine. The drawing also shows what happens when a vehicle parks behind that 35-foot setback. If it's painted and posted, at that point it becomes illegal. So one illegally parked car cuts that distance in half, reducing the sight distance to 122.5 feet. I respectfully ask that the same standard be applied to our side of the intersection and reestablish the faded 35-foot setback to achieve the required 245-foot sight distance. Paint it, post it, and above all, actively enforce it. Slowing down traffic to 25 miles per hour would be great help too, and the 35-foot setback can still be maintained. Driving through town, I noticed some inconsistencies in the speed limit. We are 35 miles per hour going into town, and it drops to 25 miles per hour in front of 42 East Main and 19 East Main. Interestingly enough, there's a 25 mile per hour sign heading west attached to the back of a 35 mile per hour sign heading east in front of 104 East Main Street. At 200 West Main, the speed increases to 35 miles per hour, and the same goes for the 200 block of East Main, 35 miles per hour. Additionally, I'd like to maybe know why, if anybody knows why points north and south are 25 miles per hour and we can't have all points east and west at 25 miles per hour. In closing, I hope logic and reason prevail. With the 2 official photos provided to you 2 weeks ago, I made the field with Hellenic Kouzina traffic problems, no Hellenic Kouzina, no traffic problems. The photos that I've provided to you show the same problem conditions just a few blocks west of us. Do we stop with Hellenic Kouzina and Filbert in Maine, or do we go over and above the state guidelines with those areas too? Left and right turns outside of signaled intersections are risky in any urban setting and must be executed with great care. If safety is at the heart of the matter, let's promote it in accordance with state guidelines and apply those guidelines fairly to address the parked vehicles here on Main and Filbert, and perhaps take a closer look at what to do with the 13,000 plus or minus moving vehicles for all of Main Street. So, our engineer, I don't know, for traffic, as far as what qualifications he has, he just took the formula that the state uses, the formula site distance table, and applied it on the CAD drawing with all of the distances, took everything into consideration, and that's provided for all of you to review at your leisure. The sheet that we had gotten from the real estate shows when we purchased it, the average daily traffic count was 13,386. And finally, the last packet shows just 7, it's actually 8 pages, different photos. The photo was that the police had provided 2 weeks ago. And it kind of, if you look at the do not pass sign on the first picture, it's up really close, and as is the telephone pole. But then when you look at the bottom picture, it's a further distance away. That's what makes me feel that it's not a personal attack, but you know, when you have all those cars parked in front of the restaurant, that's the problem we have with the restaurant there, because that wasn't there when the restaurant wasn't there, and now that the restaurant is there, we have this problem. And then the picture below shows it when the restaurant is closed on Mondays and Sundays, and we don't have that problem. So I don't know that it'd be best if it was closed 7 days a week or not there anymore, but I don't think that's the issue here. But the second page shows what it really looks like from just a regular phone camera. No zoom lenses or anything. And when I was pulled up there, then there's a car that's at the 35 foot. It's actually a little bit ahead of the 35 feet. And it's close to 8 cars that I can count back. The page 3 and 4 photos show High Street. The first page shows, right at the crosswalk. And then when you look left and right, on the second page, you're well into the intersection. More than half the vehicle, and it was a Civic that I was driving, is encroaching into the lane of travel, the right of way. And then the fifth page shows the Chestnut Street at the orthodontics office, and at the crosswalk left to right, you have very little line of sight. And then when you go through the crosswalk and into the street a little bit, then that's when you gain a little bit of sight distance. And you can actually see the canopy of the gas station down the road. But going back to what I feel is one of the biggest problems there is the speed. Of course, the volume of cars which were there before us are there now and will probably continue to increase. Is you'll see a vehicle right smack in the middle of that telephone pole. And this was happening while I was taking that picture. And you can be sure that they're not worried about who's walking in that intersection, in that crosswalk, who's standing there, who's driving, who's waiting to pull out. They were passing the cars in front of them that are stopped for the red light down the road in order to make a left turn into that intersection. Very hastily. They came through and they started blaring their horn as if I was doing something wrong. And then the last picture, which I added, was the bus that pulls up. So many vehicles go out around that bus, and then they've tried to leave at the same time where they've had their blind spot, and they've almost T-boned, or we've heard them blaring the horn, and this is mostly in the summertime when we're outside, we're walking around, and we're more attentive, more attuned to what's going on outside versus, now in the winter months when we're inside. But you can be sure that the people heading eastbound, going out around that bus to make a right turn on the Filbert, aren't worried about pedestrians that might be in the crosswalk or anything else. They're just worried about clearing the bus. So, I really think more than just 135 feet is really extreme. It would be really harmful, and I don't think it would really achieve a whole lot. My thoughts were that I expressed to both the chief and the borough manager was maybe if we just start with what's there, refresh that paint, the curve, give it the 35 feet, and give it some time to see. And if not, then maybe go another 15 feet, one more car length. Baby steps, rather than just wipe it out and no looking back. So that's all. Thank you. I'm sorry if I kept you all more than put down.
Thank you. Do we have any other guests? Citizens' comments? Any other citizens' comments or requests?
Yeah, just a quick comment, John Rupp, 333 West Main Street. I just came tonight to speak on behalf of Lombros and his restaurant. I've lived in this town for 52 years. Over half of that has been on Main Street. The only safe place to pull out on Main Street is at York Street, Market Street, and Walnut Street. And as we all know, there's traffic lights there. All the other intersections are equally as bad as Filbert Street is, and always have been. And in that same time frame, my entire life, I've seen the erosion of our businesses in town, and all the successful ones that have left and into the surrounding townships. And if you talk to any one of those owners or managers, every one of them left because people won't parallel park and walk down a street to go into a business. And now you have somebody who 3 years ago invests a lot of money into something that by all odds would have failed, but it's been nothing but successful. It was approved then to build. It was approved a year ago to expand. And people are still parallel parking. They're still walking into it. And it's busy as hell. And it's bringing people in from all over the surrounding communities. It's not like, say, our CVS, it's all people who live here go, because there's one in every little community. These are people coming from Dauphin County, York County, people that I know, that I see every time I'm there. Different people, even people from Perry County. I mean, everywhere. And it's very successful, and I think it sends the wrong message out to any business that wants to locate here, that we're not going to cooperate, and we're going to, after they invest millions of dollars, we're going to put very restrictive parking regulations in a downtown area. I just urge all of you to reconsider your positions and vote in opposition to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Dick Snyder, 338 West Main. And I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for John saying that. My son wouldn't eat anything but like bland and fancy chicken stuff. He works in Carlisle at a place that deals with iPhone type things, and there's a lot of people from California who've moved out here in the Carlisle area. And they come to here because my son's told them about the good food there. He's spending too much of his income there, sorry. And the people from California, not with, they have no variety of anything, come back regularly now because they've been introduced to that. I just want to put my 2 cents in.
Thank you. Any other citizen comments or questions?
Hi. Sally Holbert, 424 West Main Street. I have a couple, I've been here for a while, and there's a couple things I wanted to follow up on. One was the stormwater issue. I'd like to know what progress has been made down on Strawberry Alley. We have a significant stormwater issue. I've seen no activity. I know there was some investigation in the summertime, but I'd like to see what's what's the strategy to address the issue, and it's a significant issue.
Has Conrail been down there working on that?
They did in July and August, and then they have moved out since then. So we came in with Mr. Rehab, coordinated that, get the portions that are the borough, but as much as people hate the answer, you know, it's a state road. This is the Conrail Norfolk Southern issue that we continue to send them emails about, call them about. but if it's not on their priority list, they're not gonna come back and do it. So we begged them to come in, they tore it up, they left it there, they left a large hole that's there.
Well, I think you're gonna, if they're not gonna cooperate, then you need to come up with another solution, because we still get sewer charging in the inlet, so what's the solution? And have you been working on
If
it?
council wants to violate the law and have us trespass on the Norfolk spot, they can absolutely have us do that, but when they come in and shut us down, then we'll be sitting right back here with a citation.
May I suggest that you take the pipe in another direction if you can't get permission or aren't able to cooperate, they're not cooperating with you, or you're not able to form a collaborative relationship with them and able to get it solved. I'm kind of thinking you're not trying hard enough. It's been a long time, there's an issue there. I think we need to start, you need to get back on it. There's a hole, go look at it, there's a very large hole along the railroad tracks where they dug it up, the pipe is half silted shut. I think you could put some effort into it and get it resolved. And if you can't, and they say, look, you're not going to come across our property, then start looking at another location to fix it.
If it's Conrail property and they don't want to get in there and do anything, we can't force them to do it.
That's right, you're going to have to find another place to address the stormwater that's surcharging up the alley and causing, it's going up the alley, Strawberry Alley, towards Gary's property. It finds a low point, goes into my neighbor's property, goes into their backyard, floods their backyard, and there's sinkholes that are opening up. It will be a problem. It needs to be addressed, and it's unmanaged above that point in a lot of locations, and I'd be happy to share with you where they are, because I know where they
Try
are.
to strongly worded letter from the solicitor to Conrail or
Greg and I have had numerous conversations with supervisors, we've had conversations with the people that are there. The issue is they have like one crew that does the entire state of Pennsylvania that does this. I mean, the process that they were out there when they did it. And she's exactly right, I don't disagree with you. They came in, they got into a problem that was a lot bigger than they realized, and I think Greg can back me up on that. We came in, we sucked out the pipe, we took good care, it was our responsibility. I mean, there were three of us standing there watching them tear this up. This is again, I don't disagree with her. It's a way bigger problem than I think Norfolk Southern even realizes. So they don't have the money, they didn't budget money to do it, and they're not doing it.
Why don't you ask if you can go ahead and take care of it for them? Get permission to go
We-
on with their property.
We did ask that, and they said it's our property. So I don't.
Ask again. They have a process. I'm working on a project right now where we have to, we want to go underneath the tracks and put in a new sewer main.
Sure.
And there's a process to do it, follow the process, and stick with it, and I think you'll be able to get something done. So I'll check back to see how I'd like to comment on the, also on the parking. So there's a document, it just came, it was just published, it's called Complete Streets Policy. It's perfect for our town. What that is having parking along your, having sidewalks, having on-street parking. It helps to calm traffic, moderate the speeds of traffic. I agree with the gentleman that owns the restaurant that we should look at the required setback of 35 feet and address that as a site distance issue, but don't take up any more parking than that. And I'm wondering, who came up with 135?
Other natural gas outside, box 2803. Engine company 28, rescue 28.
Okay, so he needs to kind of look into design, street design, and a good place to start is to look at the PennDOT standards and then look at site distance. And we need to encourage on-street parking in every place we can. As a pedestrian, it helps to protect the pedestrians that are walking along the sidewalk. You always want to have a parked car between you and moving traffic if at all possible. It's a much safer situation. So I would definitely put it at what the requirements or recommendations are by PennDOT, which I believe is what we had presented, which is 35 feet. The other, just from moving forward, looking at next year, I think it's a really, I was surprised that, and I was waiting to see with the new people that came on the board, we went through a year that we hire consultants, the solicitor and the engineer, and I have not seen a new RFP go out for those positions. We have a lot of good engineering companies. There are a lot of good and talented solicitors, and I think it makes good business sense to put out an RFP and let people compete, let Pannoni compete again if they want to contract, but it should be an open, there should be an RFP that is put out for this next time. I understand contracts were just signed, and I would like to see the board consider writing a good RFP, putting out the requirements of the position, and letting companies compete on that and see what we get. It also doesn't hurt to have some fresh eyes and perspectives on what's happening here in the borough. So I would encourage you to do that come next year or prior to the end of the year, when you're looking at renewing contracts and instead of just renewing contracts. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other citizens' comments or requests? Are there any additions to the agenda?
I have several. I want to make or add to the agenda, cancel the motion to create the ordinance that we talked about last week in regards to the parking on East Main Street. So I'd like to just do whatever we need to do.
It would be a motion for reconsider.
I'd like to add that to the agenda. And I guess now's a good time to talk about this. And I wanted to address you, Lambros, and I apologize for using your first name, but I'm not sure I can properly pronounce your last name. I, because I'm only going to speak for myself. When that proposal came before us, my thought process was 135 feet's not that far. After walking it, I understand that it is. But what I had in the back of my mind when I personally was addressing that issue was comments and complaints that we had from neighbors, which you referenced. So that was my line of thinking, try to help address some more of those issues. Councilman Weber and I have talked about those speed limit signs, and I agree, we need to be a lot more consistent, even though it's not going to be an easy fix. I think before we do this parking issue, I think we need to talk about a whole lot more issues with speeds, you know, some of those things. So my apologies to you, but it was not meant to be malicious at all. You know, I'm a business person myself. You know, we gave up parking in front of our business for a crosswalk. It hurt at the time, I admit that. But I think you're going to see that we're going to take a better approach to this whole subject.
It scared me because I was down in York for almost 14 years, and right on the square, right in the heart of when Continental Square used to be downtown York Square. And now just because the baseball stadium moved in, all of a sudden, that's their square. Or the next guy with tens of millions of dollars develops a certain area, and that'll be the square. Anyway, and so I had seen a lot as far as traffic changes, traffic pattern changes, and parking restrictions, parking prohibitions, and it adversely affected business. And when I came here, I actually saw the building stuck in traffic. It was at my lowest. And we weren't actively looking. We were actively looking up until a certain point, but the last year I kind of just gave up and lost all hope, and then just sitting in traffic probably at my lowest. And God just put it in my lap. And then you turn in the middle of the road.
I'll share with you one of my thoughts about that. When I found out they were going to put a restaurant in there many years ago after that being abandoned bank building, I'm thinking whoever looked at that building had a lot of foresight to be able to see it, to picture a restaurant in there. So that's a compliment.
It didn't come from me. That's the marvelous thing. And we were ready. I had a full guarantor for $270,000. You think I was asking for tons of money, and I wasn't. They had my parents' house, my home, they had that property, which the White family sold to us for $270,000. And then was first, we were ready to settle, and days before they did a walkthrough and came back and said to me, "I'm sorry, we're going to back out because we don't think you can do anything with it."
Well, like I said, from just my own perception, when I heard that there was a restaurant going in there, I thought whoever thought about that was thinking way down the line. So I applaud you for that. Two other additions. I'd like to make an addition to hire Kyle Fiss as a probationary patrol officer, and a second addition to the agenda to hire Ethan Paulus as a probational police officer.
Question on those two additions, that would be for conditional
Or
offer?
conditional offer, yeah, conditional offer.
I have one more, Council President Whitcomb. Discussion of possible action on Resolution 03-2015 for Catherine Naylor.
Okay. Other additions?
Just as a follow-up, if I may, the motion for reconsideration of the prior discussion on the parking, will there be also an additional motion to take action with regard to that? Because there'll be two phases. One is to reconsider, motion to reconsider. We're going to is this body going to reconsider it or not, yes or no? And then what are you going to do after you reconsider?
My thought is to rescind or negate that motion from 2 weeks ago. At this point in time, I'm not personally ready to make a motion.
So it'll be two, it'll be a motion.
I mean, I don't know if anybody else is, but I'm not personal.
It'll be a motion to reconsider the action, that would be that, yes or no, and then the motion to rescind the action that was
So you need two motions, one to reconsider it and one to rescind it.
Yes.
Yeah, that.
Yes, yes, sir.
And as I said before, I think after getting into this as far as we've gotten into this now, I think we really need to do a lot more homework before we make a decision down there.
In the meantime, I mean, to interrupt, I would like those lines painted because pulling out tonight, the same scenario, the car right almost.
It's kind of cold to paint.
Yeah, I would say I can't speak for the.
It's kind of cold to paint right
I
now.
mean, we'll have to wait till we get some warmer weather.
Signs maybe, but signs maybe.
Yeah, we'll get it
But
taken
painting
care
we
of.
can't do right now. It's a little too cold.
We'll get it taken care of.
Do we know when that was painted last? Was
They
that
just,
part
they
of
just
the
painted it over 4 weeks ago. I have to check with Greg.
Okay, any other additions?
Yes, sir.
Have a motion to approve the additions to the agenda.
Motion from the agenda with all the additions.
Motion been made, seconded, discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. We need a motion for approval of the agenda. Motion's been made,
Second.
seconded, discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Correspondence?
No correspondence, sir.
Need a motion for approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of council on February the 3rd, 2015.
Make that motion.
Motion's been made,
Second.
seconded, discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Vendor report?
I'll probably have for council in the next 2 weeks the borough's policy as it relates to child abuse clearances, who's going to need to get them, how they're going to go through that. We don't have near the stipulations that the school district does, but we do have some people, it'll probably be 6 or 7 in practice total, and there'll be some volunteers that'll have to go through that process too. Now, there's a separate policy for volunteers than there is for staff. I'm going to send out to the individuals who want to get their abuse clearances, the process that they need to get, how they need to go through that, and who they need to present it to. So that should be done in the next 2 weeks, and I'll get that out to the volunteers who need it and the staff who need it. If you were driving down through Market Street and Main Street last night, there was a couple of UGI gas leaks along Market Street. That's what all the commotion was, around 5:30, 6:30 last night. That's what it was. Nothing was on fire, but there were several gas leaks. So if any curiosity of what that was, that's what it was. And the last thing is, and I can't harp it enough, need a pool manager for the pool. It's getting into full swing. We had a discussion at the last rec board meeting about it. You know, anybody that needs a full-time, part-time summer job, you know, 15, 16 bucks an hour, you get something in here, if we're getting down to do or die time. So, other stuff to do. Okay, and report.
Thank you. Mayor?
Thank you very much. January 21st, the Chamber of Commerce Annual Dinner and Business Meeting held at the Mechanicsburg Club. Keynote speaker was Tom Burgoyne, best friend of the Philly Fanatic. January 2 and 30th, sworn into office fire police for the year 2015. February 6th, officiated wedding at the mayor's office. The 7th, read to children and adults at the Joseph T. Simpson Library. The 9th, Crime Watch guest was Mechanicsburg Police Chief David Spots. In addition to the past year in review, we learned about call volume and how important police service is in our community. Hot dogs were served at Chief's request. February 14 and 15, Friends of the Joseph Simpson Library Book Sale Weekend. Trivia question. United Water Pennsylvania in 2014 spent $244,000 on 1,550 feet of water mains of varied diameters in the borough of Mechanicsburg. What streets were affected?
Main and Simpson.
I hear whispers.
Washington, Keller.
I hear whispering.
What word did we just read?
Dan Smith, Keller, Washington Street, send the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Chief?
Thank you. Just like council know, I received a letter of appreciation from South Central Pennsylvania Highway Safety for Sergeant Curtis for his presentation at their annual Driver's Education Seminar for young drivers.
Thank you. Solicitor?
No report.
Engineer?
Mr. President, we obviously the Memorial Park project's ground to a halt pretty much here for the next couple of weeks at least. They continue to work towards getting it fired back up when the weather breaks. Another note, Glenda. I'm sorry?
Soon I hope the weather breaks.
Yes, we average it. Glenda and the staff over helping us 4th page on the website, which is currently a little bit still under construction, but we do offer you to take a look at it. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Fire Chief?
Thank you, Mr. President. Attended the Mechanicsburg Fire Department Consolidation Finance meeting. Also attended the Borough Department Head meeting. Attended Upper Island Fire Department's banquet at Upper Island at Monaghan Township. Also held a Borough Fire Officers meeting and attended the Consolidation Steering Committee. And that's all I have for now.
Thank you, sir. The agenda items?
Consideration and possible action to adopt Resolution 2/2015 in honor of Greg Rennicker's service to the Borough of Mechanicsburg.
I'll make that motion.
Motion's been made.
Second.
Seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Discussion and possible action to adopt Resolution 03/2015 in honor of Catherine Naylor.
I'll make that motion.
Motion's been made.
Second.
Seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Consideration and possible action to approve the special events application for Earth Day on April 18, 2015.
I'll make that motion.
Motion's been made.
Second.
Seconded. Discussion?
If that's subject to the conditions on the worksheet, because there's substantial costs involved in that one. We could respectfully ask for that.
Are those costs similar to last year?
Yeah.
I'm assuming.
Yes. And
We'll
that
add that to
organizer
your
has been
motion.
shared with the cost estimates and is okay.
Yes, that's a motion.
You'll add that to the
Subject to
motion.
the conditions on.
All right? Is it okay, second? Who's second?
Yeah, I second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Consideration and possible action to approve Resolution 1/2015 from the Mechanicsburg Police Service Commission establishing the eligibility list for patrol officers.
So, motion's been made.
Second.
Seconded. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Consideration and possible action to accept the resignation of Park Security Officer and Community Service Officer Gary Kokenauer effective immediately.
I'll make that motion.
Motion's been made.
Second.
Seconded. And I'd hate to see him go.
Yeah, I would like to just say a few words for Gary. I worked with Gary when I was on the police department, and it was almost like having an extra officer on the street with him, and he was very good. Eyes and ears always open. You knew when he was down in the park and you had something active somewhere, if it went into the park, Gary would be there to help out. He's trained a lot of the park security guys over the years, and he was just a really big asset to the police department. I'm sure your guys are going to miss him.
Absolutely, I echo that 100%. That's a big loss for us. Gary's been with us for a long time.
Thank you, that's it.
Anything other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Discussion and possible action to appoint Keith Thomas to the Environmental Advisory Council to fill a vacant term through December 31st, 2016.
I make that motion.
Second. Motion's been made, seconded. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Discussion on closing of Memorial Park Drive to vehicular traffic after snow events. This was a discussion that we had at the rec board that they asked that I put on the agenda for council's discussion. They wanted to hear council's opinion on keeping the loop open so people could go in and around if they needed to turn around, but closing the actual drive as it goes back towards the pool because we don't plow it and there's really no reason for anything.
How do they anticipate closing it?
My guess would be from the beginning of it would be putting barricades up and then putting money aside to put some sort of gate mechanism that would close or open during those snow events. But ultimately, that's a
Do
decision.
we or do we not hold snow back there?
No.
No, we do not.
Would
Don't
we,
do it anymore.
Okay.
Still.
Okay.
would we be creating an issue though in terms of police not being able to
That's
get
the
back
problem.
there?
There are,
And, you know,
that's why it's on the agenda, there are logistical issues to that, being that somebody's gonna have to get out of the plow truck, come in, lock it, and then every time the police are gonna have to go back into it, if they're patrolling the park, they're gonna have to unlock it.
I think it's too much on our staff time to do that as well. I don't want to install a permanent gate with that.
No, definitely not.
That's why it's on the agenda, absolutely fine.
The thought process with this was, when we discussed it, was there's been people back in there doing donuts and that kind of stuff back in there when it snows, doing vandalism back in there when it snows. A lot of the places, if you go to Hampton, East Bend, places like that, Monroe, they have gates, they go, in the wintertime, they just go closed. You cannot go back in any further.
could we put just like a big sawhorse with closed except for, you know, and then the police could move it aside if they wanted to.
Or drive by.
Or drive by it, but to the normal person seeing this, you know, authorized personnel only, maybe that would stop them.
We could put a temporary barricade up if that's.
That would be the only way I would think it would be a fair way to do it, because you can't get police back in there. They're gonna be back there on foot anyway. If they're gonna do any noise back there on foot, you can't get a car back.
Temporary gate would be the easiest solution, so we can definitely do that if that's what council would like to do.
If I could just add a couple things. I walk in that park daily. There is an awful lot of traffic going through that park, using that as a shortcut. They have no business going through there. That driveway for the park is for park activities only. It's not a throughway.
What's the shortcut to?
Warehouses.
The warehouse is back there.
Or they do that to get out of traffic.
Or they do it actually to bypass traffic. So after walking back there numerous times, I kept thinking, why do we have our parks open in the wintertime at all? There's no reason for any vehicle to be in there. There's no park facility open or activities open from December through, it's 3 months. And maybe if we cut that down and people get used to not being able to go through there, they won't do it the rest of the year. It is a problem. And I don't think, and there's no reflection on the police, because I know they got more important things to do and worry about who's driving through the park. But they speed as well, and it's an enforcement issue. So I think the idea is a good one. They make these metal pole things that look kind of like a triangle. They have a little bar that comes down, just comes right across. It could be attached at one side, and when it's open, it just is open, and it doesn't interfere with anything. When we want to close it, it just comes closed.
The council may get a price quote on that, get for a temporary one and then a more permanent.
I mean, I think if you put a sawhorse out there, somebody's just going to come through. If they have a big enough pickup truck, they'll run right over it and keep right on going.
Well, I don't know if they'll run over it.
But I do. I think they would. Knowing some of the people that I see driving back there, I think they probably would. I may be exaggerating, but the point remains that it's being used for something improper, and we ought to do something to discourage people from using it in that way. That's my 2 cents.
So you want to, we'll put up temporary barricade for the time being, so we get a, works for me? That's fine.
Mr. President,
Okay.
could I interrupt? The park itself, if you go into the park and at the baseball or the football field, and look to the left where the dumpsters are, and right there's the back of Fried or Locations Building #1. That building is not completely sprinklered. We've looked at possibly needing an extra water supply, even though the railroad tracks are there, is laying about 2,000 feet of hose from that dumpster or the railroad tracks, going up past the pool and up through the Hines Road to get to the hydrant. There's actually marks where 1,000 feet, 1,500 feet, and 2,000 feet to get to the main 10 or 12-inch water line that's on Hines Road, which would be beneficial of supplying water to the back of that building. I would ask that we go with a recommendation on a movable barricade, see if we can stop the traffic, but as far as putting up a permanent fixed gate, that would probably slow us down. For mutual aid companies coming in, and laying that 2,000 feet of hose to Hines to get extra water in the back of that building. That's all I have, thank you.
I really think if we try the barricade, see how it does, I think that would be the best step right now, rather than getting involved in a full swing gate, permanent closure.
Just to add what Gary said, when I saw that on the agenda with just doing it during the snow period, that was one of the questions I had. Shouldn't we really be doing that December to March or?
The discussion at the rec board was
February,
specific to
whatever
snow
it is.
events, but that's the policy decision.
And I'm all in favor of trying to barricade first, but if people are driving over and doing stuff, I think we need to do something.
Well, if they drive over, then we have a reason to arrest them, right? If we can catch them.
Say one year we have a mild winter and people want to drive in and use the park for legitimate.
But after 10 o'clock at night, you're not supposed to be there anyway.
8 o'clock.
8 o'clock, 8 o'clock, I'm sorry.
There is, my
Every
point
day,
is-
we're gonna send somebody out to put barricades up. Is that?
No, the barricade would be up from December through the beginning of March.
The way
There's no activities in the park during that time.
it's
There's no
closed,
reason.
period.
If people want to walk there, they can park in the horseshoe and walk through the park just like anybody else can.
Yeah.
And the quantity of people would be, you know, you probably put on, count on your hand, I mean, it'd be very limited.
I mean, there's actually somebody that parks their car there all day long in that circle. I see it every day. There's an SUV parked there every day.
Probably working over the shop across the street.
Could be.
Okay, so is that
Can we go with temporary sign?
temporary barricade right now?
Gotcha. Yes, sir.
And I would assume that this will probably have to go into an ordinance if we're gonna close it.
I think you're restricting
Yeah.
public access to the park, so I think it would.
But I think, let's try it temporarily with the,
I think it goes to what your goal is. If the goal is to prevent people from going back there, because the discussion at the board meeting was people shouldn't be back there doing donuts in the snow.
Right,
There's no
right.
business to be back there.
right.
The discussion about closing the park entirely in terms of blocking that was not the discussion. So the discussion was, do you want to, and furthermore, by putting a temporary sign up when it snows, we're saying don't drive on this road. There's snow on it, don't drive on it. I don't know if the goal from the rec board was to close the park for people to go into it.
What I got out of the board.
I think you're going from micro to macro real quick in terms of, if I go to the park in December and it's closed, is your park technically closed? How are they going to enforce that? What if somebody moves it and they say, well, why is the park closed? You know what I mean? Like, if I want to take my kid to swing and I live on Marble Street, I'm not going to walk from Marble Street down there, so I guess I park in the U, and you don't have people to go back. If that's the goal, I think we need to do more than just put a barricade up. We need to really sign that well, that the park is closed from here back from X to Y, you know, for driving purposes.
Right.
So, but that's obviously would require.
I think that's the point, closing it to vehicular traffic. We're not closing the park to use.
Correct. I'm just saying the conversation that Mark and I had with the board was during snow events. So I just want to make sure before we go 100 miles an hour in a more aggressive direction.
I think a lot of what they were talking about during snow events is more the safety issue too. People going back in there just ripping and tearing things up, or chance of a vehicle doing any crashing or anything up there, slim to none. But they're looking at safety issues too. You know, when something goes flying in there and they can't stop what they do, go into the fence of the football field, boom. You know, or other things, the pool damage.
Is the discussion revolving around the parking areas or the grass areas or all of it, or, you know?
Parking lots was where they're saying they're seeing a lot of the, you know, the donuts and all that, more than anything, and going up towards the Gordon area and all that kind of stuff.
We're almost in March now, although it's the freezing. We're almost in March now. The chief and I were just discussing, said that we don't need to do an ordinance change if we do a temporary traffic regulation within a 90-day period.
We're allowed to experiment with traffic regulations.
So we can use a barricade now during the snow, and then when we go into the winter.
At least you got a trial period until.
Okay, we'll see how it works out.
I think if we barricade it
though, I think we still need to put signage on it to.
No disagreement, no disagreement, no disagreement.
I don't think we did a motion.
It's not really, I don't know if that needs to be a motion, it's just, that's more of a policy decision, management decision, if you want to.
I think you're just giving direction to
Yeah,
staff.
it's a direction.
Yeah.
We got it. We got the
President, give the direction.
We'll do that. Take care of it, close, put the barricades up, and note the vehicle traffic.
Got it.
Thank you.
You bet. Approval of capital highway, general highway sewer and capital sewer fund expenditures from January 1, 2015 through January 31st, 2015.
Take that motion.
Motion's been made.
Second.
Seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Consideration and possible action to reconsider the no parking ordinance on East Main Street.
I'll make that motion.
Motion's been made.
Second.
Seconded. Discussion.
If I may, I'd like to add a few comments to the comments that were made by Lambros and Jack. You know, when I took this position, my sentiment was that I would do what I thought was right, and if I made a mistake, I'd be the first guy to admit it. And I'm publicly admitting that I made a mistake in judgment in this particular instance, given the information we were given at the time. I think Lambros's pictures are indeed quite revealing. In addition to that, I drove down there and walked it several times, in fact, a half a dozen times at least, to the point where Councilman Pellman and I went down and actually measured the distances. The current curve that he's talking about that's supposed to be 35 feet is actually only 27 feet right now. It's not even 35 feet. If we would increase that to 35 feet, that would get you just about past that do not pass sign that you see in that exhibit number 2. To me, that's more than enough distance to see. Mainly, if you look at his drawing on this particular sheet, if you notice there's a picture of a car in the intersection. Now, if that were you or I or anybody else in this room driving right there, you would not stop your car there to look both ways. You would have to pull out into traffic to look both ways. Just like you would at High Street or Washington Street or Chestnut Street or any of the other north-south streets on Main Street other than those with a light. So I see no reason why we need to make exception here. Additionally, and since Mr. Snyder was already up and speaking, I measured the corner at his property, and the yellow curb, if you're heading north on Washington Street, I'm sorry, south on Washington Street, from the park, which we have a lot of people that drive from the park, and want to turn onto Main Street, if their parking is full in front of where Mr. Snyder's house is, it's only 11 feet back. That's the end of the yellow curb, and there's no sign there that says no parking. It's impossible to pull out there. Absolutely impossible. So I think we need to, I go along with what Councilman Winchell said. I don't think we need to do anything right now other than fix up what's there. If we put that yellow curving to the 35 feet that it's supposed to be, that would increase our vision a little bit better, and we could look at it down the line. But at this point, I think that we need to leave well enough alone. My second reason for this, and I had to do some long thinking about this, but it didn't take real long, and that is that we're trying to promote business downtown. And we have two very viable businesses right now, the Hellenic Kouzina and Taylor Eisenberger's dress shop. Those are two very, very busy businesses in this town. Now, Taylor has already come to us for approval to knock down the garage, expand her business, and she's providing parking in the back to do that. These two businesses are bringing outside of Mechanicsburg Borough people into our town. People who go to, I'm sure people who go to Lambros's restaurant will frequent other businesses downtown, either on the way to or from his restaurant. So it's inviting to the entire community. If we rescind parking and keep people away from his business, I think we do damage to the other businesses in town as well. So I think I think this motion is one that we need to all jump on here and reconsider and make what I consider to be the right move this time. That's all I have. Thank you.
I think just to take that one step further, I think we need to send this probably to the Public Safety Committee, because again, I think we need to come up with consistency and speeds on all the streets. I know other state roads, I know the issues there, but yet, as Mr. Lambert brought up, it really doesn't make sense.
Well, PennDOT has a speed zone, and I don't think, have we asked them for a lowering of speed zones in that section of Main Street at all? I doubt, it's been a while if we have.
Could we draft a resolution for council to petition the state?
We gladly can. The last time we got involved with PennDOT and reg speed limits was 08 into 09 on Walnut Street. We had an issue with that.
Oh, yeah, that's right, Ben.
That's when it was.
And quite frankly, PennDOT wasn't going to agree with it. We used political influence at the state level. We got our senator and representative involved in that because their initial answer was no. They weren't going to help us. They weren't going to take anything away.
But it's been a while. I think it's.
Oh, no, it's certainly a policy decision for council, and we can support that. The reason the speeds are 35 coming out of town and 25, basically what I call in the heart of town, is because that's how PennDOT set it up, because they're state roads. That wasn't a borough decision to do that.
Right.
But certainly we can request PennDOT when the manager I met with Lambros, so there's no misunderstanding here. We made it absolutely 100% clear to him. His business is the kind of business we want in town. It's good for our town. We want it here. We told him that. I told him that personally when he met with us. There's safety issues here. The bottom line is we have, the heart of our town was laid out in the 1800s, and that's going to cause problems in modern society. Policy decision for council, we'll go on board with whatever council decides to, the best way to deal with this.
I think that Borough Council jumped on this because, one, we trust our public safety officers. And I think that we also need some common sense, and that we need to start with what I think would be the minimum requirement, which is 35 feet, and then work from there. I think we need to start enforcing the laws we currently have versus taking a giant step. And I think that goes into what the next step will be, the next motion. I think we tethered this to another parking restriction, which was the one on Locust Street. And I think that the one next to Park Street, the one next to the CVS, I think we were going to advertise both at the same time.
That would be the loading zone.
Right.
They were two separate roads.
They're two separate motions. They aren't together.
Okay. Just as long as we separate those two.
If I may add, I do find it interesting that all the north-south roads into Mechanicsburg, the main north-south roads are 25 miles per hour. And Main Street and Simpson Street are 35.
35 only comes down to High Street.
It depends which way you're going. It's not consistent going both ways. You drive it, you'll see.
If council wants Chief and I to get Cheryl and Pat involved, we can, if you guys want to pass a resolution at your next meeting, that we can set up meetings with them and we can see what we can do.
We should look at that. We should start with the resolution on 25 miles per hour on all state roads. If that's what we want.
Inside the borough limits.
Inside the borough.
Inside the borough limits, yeah.
So we don't have any authority outside the borough limits.
That would relieve this issue to some degree. If the speed limit were 25 rather than 35, you got more time to stop. It's all pretty logical.
You may put up all the speed zone signs you want to, Gary. You know as well as I do that. If they want to do 35, they're going to do 35.
They're only as good as long as they're enforced.
Nobody drives 35 on Walnut Street because we control that.
And I'll go even further. I think we need, I made the borough council president, the solicitor, and the borough manager aware of some discrepancies that are listed in the ordinance as far as no parking regulations. There are some overlaps. There are some glaring gaps that exist in the ordinance, and we need to update those I think we also need to take a look at the parking violation fines. They don't really have much teeth, I don't think, because, for an example, a fine for parking in front of a fire hydrant is $10. That's $10. So that's in the ordinance. We could possibly take a look at revising.
I would like to recommend that we put that before the public safety.
Everything we're talking about here tonight, we need to go to the public safety committee, put it all together, and try to work on
A whole lot of issues.
Yeah.
Why don't we schedule an external one of those, so many different things, instead of doing that at the first meeting of the month?
Yeah.
Well, I'll send out an email up to the committee, have them coordinate their schedules, and then we'll put that out. So we can knock all these things out. So if we want to get a resolution organized, get that organized, then we'll do the legwork on that. And then with the no parking things that Councilman Miller's talking about, as well as.
We can try to
We'll just get everything done instead of doing it beforehand.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do. I'll send an email out.
So I think there's a motion. There's a motion on the table to reconsider.
Reconsider the action taken on February 3rd.
It's been seconded.
Okay.
So there's a motion on the
And the
table.
discussion's over now? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Discussion of possible action to rescind the no parking ordinance on, or rescind the motion for the no parking ordinance on East Main Street.
I'll make that motion.
Motion's been made.
And I'll second it.
Seconded. Any discussion?
Now, we're not affecting the
No.
existing 35 feet at that.
No,
No.
we'll get that painted and we'll do whatever the site distance and the legal requirements are for that.
We can tie that to just reference the February 3rd
Thank you.
media council.
And in the meantime, I believe we can go ahead and do that. Can we do that loading zone for the CVS?
Yeah, we were holding, the only thing we were holding was the advertising on that. So
Yeah, right.
that'll get done.
Yeah, okay.
That'll get done, we'll take care of that.
Get that done, okay.
Motion and a second.
Okay,
Yes.
any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Consideration of possible action to approve making a conditional offer of employment to Kyle Fitz as a probationary patrol officer.
I'll make that motion. Motion's been made.
Second.
Seconded. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Consideration of possible action to approve making a conditional offer of employment to Ethan Paulus as a probationary patrol officer.
I will make that motion.
Motion's been made. Seconded. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Any other citizens' comments?
Good evening, Kathy Rupp, 333 West Main Street. As regards your debate about the park, as a 29-year neighbor of the park, we use the park all year. One year we had a Super Bowl birthday party for my son there and invited the whole 5th grade class. So changing the openness of the park between December and March, I see as kind of contrary to your aims, because as I remember this summer, there was a lot of vandalism in the park, and the more families that you have using the park and the more upstanding citizens that are there, the less you have a chance for vandals to vandalize the park. There are also handicapped people that cannot drive, through the circle and then use the park area. So your temporary barricade saying no through street, I think is fine, but to limit access to using the town park in the winter. My son's birthday is February 3rd, and the entire 5th grade class of Broad Street was there, and they did drive, and they didn't do any vandalism. So, thank you.
And I would hope that there's no misconception, because I think we stressed that pretty strongly, that we're not trying to eliminate the use of the park just to drive through.
Right, but to say to limit it between December and March, you could have a 50-degree day in there. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Brian Gross, 214 North Walnut Street. That would be the house just north of the previous Spanky's on Walnut Street, B&E Automotive. I bought that 30 years ago as a primary residence. Also have John Gross and Company alongside there. Reason being, it was very handy. I could meet the police in the middle of the night when the alarms go off, and Several years ago, I was afforded the opportunity to I bought a farm in Shippensburg. I now commute an hour morning and night to come to the borough to work. I was able to do that because my son agreed to stay in the house and raise his family there with my granddaughter and his girlfriend. I received a letter from the borough just recently that before August I need to have the house inspected as a rental unit, and I'd just like to address that as I don't see it as a rental unit. I don't when I don't feel like driving an hour, like tonight it's late, I gotta be in the morning. I stay in the residence. It's part of, I own, it's a secondary residence. My tax returns are available to you for any rental income. There is none. How this got on the table is his girlfriend sent a sewer and water. I said, you guys pick up with the bills, help me out here. Sent a sewer and a water bill in, and they saw the name was different than was on the original bill. So, okay, is that a rental property? So I just asked where I turn to address my concerns that I'm concerned that with a inspection, I'm looking at a handicap ramp, and who knows what goes with rental properties. I never had a rental property. So I'm concerned that I'll have extraordinary expenses.
Handicap ramp sidewalk aren't part of the rental inspection. It's mainly, well, that's outside of it. The rental inspection is pretty specific to property maintenance, you know, smoke detectors, GFIs, things like that. So you wouldn't have anything to alleviate that. And the answer to your question very simply, to get off the rental rolls is add your husband, or excuse me, your husband, your son, your son to the deed, and then there's no longer a rental property. So that's the simplest, shortest. Do that.
Thank you.
Do that.
Any other citizen comments? Any other business? I'm sorry.
Yes. Excuse me. Keith Thomas, 43 South Frederick. Thank you to the council for your appointment to the Environmental Committee. But I stand here tonight in support of the Greek restaurant. Was just there tonight. Was able to get parking in the lot. When we pulled up, we thought, boy, what's going on? Why are there so many cars here? It's a Tuesday night in February. That restaurant was packed. We were lucky to get the last table open. This is the kind of success we want to have in Mechanicsburg. And so I thank you for reconsidering as you have tonight. It's only fair to this man who has worked so hard to bring this good business to our town. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Any other business?
Hi.
Still coming, I didn't see it.
Suzanne Brenner out of the 23 West Simpson Street. And I'm just wondering if you advertise for a new pool manager. Have you sent out advertisement about that?
We've advertised it in the paper. It's been on Facebook 7 different times. It's been, I mean, everywhere. So.
And there's no one.
We've had.
I'll call for Rick. Probably hair and new pools.
I mean, if you're looking, you're hired.
What do you think?
Pays good. We have advertised it, and we had one person come in, but they didn't meet the criteria that we needed, so they were just.
I just wondered because they're advertising early pool sale, ticket sales and everything.
Yeah.
You don't have a manager, you can't have a pool. So.
You're preaching to the choir.
If you know someone, seriously.
Oh,
if you know someone,
absolutely.
pass it
I'll
along.
tell people. Yes. Okay.
And we've got. I mean, the spell here. I mean, we have some backup plans after that. But if it doesn't work out, but we really, the best case scenario for us is to have somebody get them in, get them and tell anybody that you know. We'll send them to the training. We'll get them the certification. We'll make it as turnkey as possible.
Okay.
And then you get it.
Thank you.
I have a question about it. No, I just have a question about the pool. Is there any special certifications for that? Like if I ask people that I know.
Sure. We will send you, it's called a aquatics facilities manager. There's a course, it's a day and a half, 2 days, and we the borough pays for it and we send them to that. So if they don't have any background in it, if they have any sort of management ability, we'll even get them the appropriate certifications.
But even like a responsible college-age student would be eligible.
We asked for a college degree on the actual job description, but yeah, that would be helpful. So a college degree would be pretty much bare bones. Any managerial experience would be nice.
Not full
Darn.
No, I have a son too.
That's right.
They can share.
We can do co-managers, that's fine too. Make it work.
My name is Matt DeLobos. I'm here in support of the Greek restaurant. I can't add to anything that's been so eloquently said tonight, other than to compliment you. As a council, you sent a strong message that we're a town that invites people, that it's a walking community, that we want to embrace and reward people who come and invest, take risks and invest, and we share in their success. So my compliments to you for your thorough consideration and for how deeply you've thought about this and sent a message, quite frankly, that other communities could emulate. So my compliments to you. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other business, Glenda? Yes, sir. Chief?
Speaking of looking for help, we're also looking for school crossing guard morning and afternoon shift. 45 minutes gets you $10. If you're we do have the ad up on the website, so if you're interested or know somebody, dependability is your key. But we're again short on crossing guards for the morning and afternoon. Is what we need.
Mayor?
The annual Washington banquet's this Saturday night. And I'm sure we could still maybe scoop a few people in if they talk to Mr. Tracy.
Thank you. Gary?
Nothing further, thank you.
I don't want to, I don't know, nothing to say about. One thing I'd like to thank the mayor, Jack Wenchel, the borough manager, and the Chamber of Commerce for helping with my son. As of February 11th, he became an Eagle Scout. He had his ceremony. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Nothing further.
Greg?
Okay.
One quick reminder, Mr. President, Citizens Fire and Rescue Company up on South Third Street is holding a breakfast buffet on Sunday, March the 1st, from 7:30 to 11 a.m. That's all I have. Thank you.
We will be adjourning to an executive session with no action to be taken. We are adjourned.